Imagine for a moment that everything you ever sought from others, approval, love, recognition, purpose, was already quietly emanating from within you. That you were never the seeker, but the sought. That the very energy you wish to attract is already pulsing through your being, waiting for you to acknowledge it. You see, we are all playing roles in this marvelous theater of existence, and yet most people forget that the roles are costumes, not identities. So what if, instead of running after what you think you lack, you move through life as though you already were the answer to the question others are asking? This is not about pretending in the shallow sense. It is about aligning your being with the awareness that there is nothing to chase. You do not need to become something. You need only recognize what you already are. You are the presence people seek, not because of some egoic superiority, but because the very nature of being itself is magnetic. Authenticity draws others, not through effort, but through stillness. Act as if you are the one they seek, not to manipulate or impress, but to reveal. Reveal that the treasure is not over the next hill, or hidden in the next relationship, or buried in the next success. It is right here, in your breath, in your stillness, in your being. People respond not to the masks we wear, but to the silence behind our eyes, the space where we have stopped trying to become and simply are. To act as if you are the one they seek is to embody the paradox of life. You find everything by letting go of the need to find anything. You shine by ceasing to strive. You are noticed not when you demand attention, but when you no longer need it. Because the one they seek does not chase. They remain grounded in the knowledge that the dance of life always finds its rhythm again. And when you stand still in your own center, the music comes to you. So walk as though the path is unfolding beneath your feet. Speak as though the truth is echoing through your voice. Move through the world with the ease of someone who knows they are already home. Imagine waking up one morning with the realization that everything you've been striving to become is in fact already who you are. The very essence of your search for love, for success, for validation is not something you need to acquire, but something you need to remember. You have spent years projecting your desires into the future, chasing images and symbols, hoping that if you move fast enough, far enough, or work hard enough, you'll finally arrive at the place where you are enough. But what if there is no such place? What if the arrival you seek is not a point in time, but a shift in perception? When a flower blooms, it doesn't struggle or beg the sun to notice it. It simply exists, rooted in its own nature. And by doing so, the bees come, the breeze dances through its petals, and the world responds. In the same way, you don't need to do anything to be worthy of attention, admiration, or love. You are already it. You are the radiance you've been trying to earn. You are the light you've been waiting to see reflected in someone else's eye. The very idea that you are not yet whole is the illusion that keeps you seeking. The world has taught you to measure yourself through comparison, through how well you perform, how attractive you appear, how intelligent you sound, how useful you are. But this conditioning blinds you to the deeper truth. Your value is not derived from what you do or how you appear, but from the simple fact that you are. Existence itself is your credential. The universe did not make a mistake in creating you. The breath you take, the consciousness that allows you to hear these words, the awareness behind your eyes, these are not accidents. They are expressions of a deeper intelligence. And that intelligence is not something you have, it's something you are. You have always been enough, but the mind has been conditioned to believe otherwise. It whispers, not yet. Just a little more. Just one more achievement. One more compliment. One more person to approve. And so you run. But the more you run, the further you get from the stillness that has been quietly holding you all along. The paradox is that the very thing you are running toward is the thing you must stop to see in stillness, not striving. The truth of your being is revealed. To act as if you are the one they seek is not arrogance. It is the return to a natural state. It is the shedding of self-doubt, not through force or ego, but through clarity. You realize that what others are drawn to in you is not your performance, but your presence. The calm that comes from knowing you have nothing to prove, the subtle confidence that radiates when you're not seeking to be chosen, but are instead choosing yourself. You don't have to manufacture charisma or charm or importance. Those are the surface ripples of a much deeper current. When you stop trying to become someone, you allow the truth of who you are to rise. And in that truth there is a quiet power, a power that doesn't need applause because it is not performing, a power that doesn't need to chase because it knows it is already enough. And this is the irony. The less you chase, the more you attract. The less you seek approval, the more others feel drawn to your ease. Not because you're trying, but because you're being. There is a quality in a person who knows their worth, not in a loud or boastful way, but in the way they breathe, the way they listen, the way they walk into a room without needing to be noticed. People sense it. It's as if you are tuned in to a frequency they've forgotten. It awakens something in them, not all of you, but a remembrance of themselves. When you rest in your own being, you give others permission to do the same. You become not a destination, but a mirror, a reflection of the part of them that is also whole, also complete, also already enough. You were not born into this world to seek your value in other people's eyes. You were born as value itself. But you've been taught to doubt it, to cover it up with masks, roles, and identities that promise acceptance in exchange for authenticity. And yet none of those roles ever feel like home, do they? Because deep down you remember what it felt like to just be. As a child you played not to be good enough, but because play was natural, you laughed, not to impress, but because joy had no filter. That child is still within you, not lost, only quiet, waiting for you to remember that nothing has changed. The essence is still there. So when you move through the world, move not from a place of lack, but from a place of knowing that you are not trying to become the one they seek. You already are. Let that knowing soften your voice, calm your breath, lift your posture, open your heart. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be perfect to be seen. The presence of someone who is at peace with themselves is the loudest presence in any room. To act as if you are the one they seek is to live as though the treasure has already been found. I say, at least I've done my part in looking. There's a vast difference between being and becoming, though the world rarely tells you that. You grow up under the illusion that you must always become something. Better, stronger, richer, more attractive, more intelligent, more spiritual. It is the culture of becoming. A relentless chase toward an imagined destination that never quite arrives. And so you keep moving, running from the discomfort of now into the mirage of later. But being, pure, unfiltered being, is not about reaching. It's about resting in what already is. It is the recognition that the essence of who you are needs no improvement, no polishing, no decoration. It only asks to be seen. To be is to stand in the raw truth of your own presence without dressing it up for the world. To be is to sit in silence without trying to fix it. To be is to allow yourself to exist without effort. This goes against everything you've been taught. You were rewarded for performing, praised for achievements, encouraged to build a personality that would earn love. That love that is earned by performance is always conditional, and the soul does not thrive on conditions. It thrives on the freedom to be as it is. You see, becoming is rooted in the belief that who you are now is not enough, that somehow your worth lies just beyond the next goal, the next title, the next moment of recognition. It is an endless staircase, each step promising fulfillment, but never quite delivering it, because when you arrive at that next step, the mind has already set its sights on the one after that. It is a trap disguised as progress, a treadmill of identity that keeps you occupied but never satisfied. And all the while, the treasure is buried in the one place you're not looking, in the now, in the stillness, in the state of simply being. Being is not passive. It is not lazy or stagnant. It is not the absence of movement, but the presence of awareness. When you are truly being, you are not asleep to life, you are awake to it. You are not lost in a future version of yourself, you are fully engaged with what is. And in that state, you don't need to pretend or protect or chase. You are not living to be seen, you are seeing. You are not speaking to impress, you are expressing. You are not trying to become, you are allowing what already is to shine through. Most people wear layers of identity like armor. They introduce themselves not as a being, but as a resume. I do this, I have that, I've achieved these things. But the truth of who you are has nothing to do with those layers. Who you are is the awareness underneath all of it, the space in which your thoughts rise and fall, the still presence behind your words, behind your emotions, behind your story. And you don't need to build it. You only need to recognize it. The beauty of being is that it asks nothing from you except presence. It is not a task. It is not a practice. It is not something you improve at. You don't become better at being. You either remember it or you forget it. That's all. And when you remember it, something extraordinary happens. You become transparent, not invisible but see-through. People no longer engage with your defenses. They meet your essence. They sense your authenticity, not because you're trying to show it, but because there's nothing left to hide. You're not busy becoming. You're simply allowing yourself to be seen as you are. There's a stillness that comes with being, a quiet confidence that doesn't demand anything from the world. You are not waiting for someone to validate your existence. You're not performing to be worthy of attention. You're simply here, fully. And that fullness is enough. That fullness is magnetic, because people are tired of facades, even if they don't know it. They are drawn to realness, to presence, to the feeling of being in the company of someone who has nothing to prove. Becoming is full of tension. There's always a tightness in the chase. The mind is projecting forward, imagining a future in which everything makes sense. But being has no tension. It is not leaning into tomorrow. It is resting in today. And in that rest, there's a release. You stop running, you stop resisting, you stop negotiating with life. You begin to flow. And strangely enough, that's when things begin to align. That's when the doors you were pushing against begin to open on their own. Not because you forced them, but because your energy changed. You stopped trying to manipulate outcomes. You stopped trying to control how you are perceived. You trusted the moment, and the moment responded. You didn't become powerful. You simply stopped forgetting your power. There is nothing wrong with growth. There's nothing wrong with evolving, learning, or expanding. But these are the byproducts of being, not the requirements for it. You don't need to improve yourself to be yourself. Growth should not be a strategy to escape who you are, but a natural unfolding of who you've always been. When you stop trying to become, life has the space to shape you from the inside, without pressure, without pretense. So much suffering comes from the belief that you must do more, be more, accomplish more in order to be enough. Only being, and in that being, everything is already complete. What we often fail to recognize is that perception shapes reality far more than reality shapes perception. The way you see yourself, the image you carry silently in the theater of your mind, is the lens through which life reflects back at you. You are not separate from the world around you. You are entangled in it. The self you hold inwardly is not hidden from life. It is broadcast constantly in ways too subtle for language to capture. The strange paradox is this. The world does not respond to what is objectively real. It responds to what you believe is real about yourself. Not the truth, but your truth. Not the facts, but the feeling. And that feeling has a frequency, and that frequency sends out a signal. You might believe the world is indifferent, cold, impersonal, that things happen because of randomness, luck, or external control, but this belief itself becomes the architecture of your experience. And so, when you move through life holding the idea that you are not worthy, not ready, not enough, life obliges you, not because it is cruel, but because it is reflective. It mirrors the vibration you carry, not to punish you, but to help you see yourself more clearly. In this sense, life is not a challenge to overcome, but a mirror to awaken within. You see, you already have a role in this vast dance of existence. You are not waiting to be chosen. You are not standing outside the party, hoping someone opens the door. The door has always been open. You were the one who hesitated. You were the one who doubted, not because you are unworthy, but because you forgot. You forgot that the world bends around those who remember who they are. The energy of certainty, even when quiet, has a gravitational pull. And when you embody the feeling of being the one they seek, it's not arrogance, it's alignment. The mind is conditioned to wait for evidence before it believes. It wants to see before it feels. It wants confirmation before commitment. But the deeper movement of life works the other way around. You feel first, and then the outer world rearranges itself to meet your feeling. It's not magic, though it often looks that way. It's not manipulation, though it can be powerful. It's resonance. Life moves toward the frequency you radiate, and when that frequency says, I am it, I am the one, I am already chosen, then the world begins to echo that back. But not because it decided to. It always was. You were the one tuning the radio. You may have been told to be humble, to not think too highly of yourself, to wait your turn, to earn your worth through suffering or sacrifice. And yet, who gave you those ideas? Where did they come from? Are they ancient truths or just inherited beliefs passed down by others who forgot their own light? The game is not about pretending. It is not about inflating your ego or demanding attention. It is about recognizing that at the core of your being is a quiet but undeniable presence that needs no permission to exist and no validation to express. It already is. And when you start to move from that place, not with noise but with knowing, you become the one who is no longer seeking but embodying. There is something magnetic about people who are not reaching, not grasping, not performing. People who walk into a room and carry no tension about whether they will be accepted or not. They are not there to be liked. They are there to be. And in their being, something stirs in others. Not admiration, but recognition. Recognition of that same presence within themselves, often long buried. And so, the one who remembers becomes the mirror for those who have forgotten. The one who walks in alignment reminds others of what it feels like to be real, to be whole, to be here. You are not the role you play, you are not the story you tell, you are not the identity you protect. All of those are garments worn by the deeper self. When you shift your perception and begin to see yourself as the one they seek, the actor drops the mask and the being steps forward. This shift is not dramatic. It does not come with fireworks or applause. It comes in the quiet moments when you stop asking for permission to exist as you are, when you stop apologizing for taking up space, when you stop adjusting your expression to meet the comfort of others. It comes when you sit in your own presence and realize that nothing is missing, that everything you tried to become was already there in seed form, waiting not to be planted, but to be recognized. And that recognition is not a mental event. It is a shift in vibration, a change in how you carry your own name. You walk differently when you know you're the one. You speak with a different cadence. You listen more deeply, not because you're trying to win favor, but because you're no longer distracted by self-doubt. You are not looking for cues on how to behave. You are the cue. You are not waiting for a signal to start. You are the signal. And this is not learned, it is remembered. It is the soul reclaiming its center after wandering through the fog of forgetfulness. It's tempting to think this state of being is reserved for the few, for the successful, the enlightened, the extraordinary. But that's just another illusion. The so-called extraordinary ones were often simply those who dared to believe their inner world had weight, that their essence mattered. They were not chosen by fate, they chose themselves. Not in rebellion, but in remembrance. And you can do the same, not by force, not by manipulation, but by subtle internal realignment, by no longer waiting to be seen, but by seeing yourself first. Life bends around the posture of your perception. You cannot fake being the one. You must feel it. And feeling it does not require outer confirmation. It only asks for inner honesty. When you let go of the need to prove and step into the energy of already being it, then everything changes. Not because the world changed, but because you changed how you meet the world. You don't need a new reality, you need new eyes. You don't need approval, you need awareness. You don't need to chase being sought, you need to remember that you already are. The world, as we often see it, appears to be a sequence of events unfolding around us. Jobs to get, people to impress, standards to meet, hierarchies to climb. And in this apparent chaos, we get caught in the belief that we must perform in order to belong, that we must attain some level of external success or significance before we can allow ourselves to feel worthy. But what if this is completely backward? But if you've been attempting to become something rather than realizing what you already are, the illusion lies in the idea that you are somehow separate from the value you seek. You may imagine the permission by some authority figure. You may never meet and surrender your human freedom. If you want any permission, you may contend your freedom from within. You become a chameleon, adjusting, modifying, shrinking or inflating in response to what you think the world wants. But in doing so, you move farther from your center, away from the stillness that knows no striving. When you perform, you are not present. You are trying to be seen rather than seeing. You are trying to be accepted rather than accepting. And this very act of seeking approval distorts your essence. The natural expression of who you are becomes filtered, edited, and diluted until it resembles something acceptable, but not something real. You cannot be deeply connected to life while simultaneously pretending to be someone else. The world doesn't need another performance. It doesn't need another well-rehearsed version of a person trying to appear worthy. What the world needs is presence. Raw, real, quiet presence that doesn't ask for attention, but naturally draws it. You have mistaken the mask for your face. You have forgotten that worth is not achieved, it is realized. You were never meant to hustle for your place in the universe. You already belong. But in forgetting this, you act as if you must prove yourself. And so you enter conversations with tension, you enter rooms with unease, you approach relationships with fear, because deep down, you are waiting for the world to tell you that you matter. And this waiting becomes your prison. Because if you give the world the power to validate you, you also give it the power to deny you. True authenticity is not loud, does not announce itself or demand applause, it simply is. When you stop performing, when you stop modifying your presence to suit the expectations of others, you begin to access a different kind of power, a quiet magnetism, a gravitational pull that emerges not from effort, but from ease. When you sit in your own skin without resistance, you become undeniable. Not because you're trying to be anything, but because you are everything you've stopped suppressing. You're not trying to impress, and that very lack of trying becomes the most impressive thing about you. The paradox is that those who stop trying to belong often belong the most. Those who stop reaching for approval often receive it without effort, not because the world changes, but because they have stopped resisting themselves. The energy of trying implies you are not it yet, and this becomes a frequency of lack. But when you embody what you seek without striving for it, when you rest in your own being without apology, you align with the deeper rhythm of life. You no longer need to be the best, you only need to be fully present. And in that presence, the illusion of separation dissolves. So many people live as if life is an audition, as if every moment must be curated, every word calculated, every interaction optimized for maximum approval. But what are you auditioning for? Who is the judge? And what happens when you realize that there is no stage, no panel of critics, no final score? There is only this moment, this breath, this chance to be fully who you are without ornament. And when you meet this moment without resistance, something remarkable happens. You no longer perform, you participate. You no longer edit, you express. This does not mean you become careless or unrefined. It means you become natural. A river does not rehearse its flow. A flower does not ask if it bloomed correctly. They simply exist as extensions of life. You too are an extension of life. But unlike the river or the flower, you have a mind that can deceive itself. A mind that can create a self-immune. It's about subtracting everything false. It's about peeling back the layers of performance until what remains is not a role, but a real presence. There is an energy to someone who has nothing to prove. You feel it when you're with them. They don't seek to impress you, and yet you find yourself impressed. They don't try to dominate the room, and yet the room orients itself around them. This is not power in the traditional sense, it's alignment. It's the resonance of someone who has stopped trying to be something other than who they are. They don't speak to be heard, they speak because they have something true to say. And if no one listens, that's fine, because they were never speaking to be validated. They were simply being. And so you must ask yourself, are you trying to be liked, or are you being yourself? Are you curating your life to match the highlight reel of someone else, or are you moving from the quiet current within? Are you seeking recognition, or are you recognizing yourself already? Every moment you perform is a moment you miss. The beauty of authenticity. And the great tragedy is that most people will go their entire lives without ever meeting their true self, because they were too busy performing a version of themselves that they thought others wanted to see. But here's the truth. No one else knows what the right version of you is supposed to be. No one else has your blueprint. No one else hears your inner music. So stop looking outward for your cue. Stop scanning the faces of strangers for signs of your worth. Stop adjusting the volume of your truth based on who might be listening. You are not made to be a copy. You are made to be a voice. And the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more truth. Your truth. When you drop the performance, you risk being misunderstood. You risk being judged. You risk being seen without armor. but you also open the door to real connection, because only the real can meet the real. And once you have tasted that kind of connection, once you have stood in your own essence without needing approval, you will never again be satisfied with applause for a role you played. You will want only to be... There comes a moment in life when you no longer ask, can I? But rather, what am I waiting for? You see, most of us are not held back by the world, but by the stories we whisper to ourselves in the dark. You were taught to doubt, not because you are incapable, but because the world forgot how to trust its own becoming. Most people walk through life wearing invisible chains, and the tragedy is they believe those chains are real. From a young age, we are given names, roles, labels, and expectations. We are told what we are good at, what we're not, what is possible and what is out of reach. Slowly those ideas solidify. They become the frame through which we view ourselves. We no longer test our boundaries because we have accepted them as permanent truths. But what if they're not? What if everything you believe you can't do is simply an echo of someone else's fear passed down to you like an heirloom no one thought to question? These limitations, they don't come from your essence. They come from interpretation, from habit, from voices that never belonged to you in the first place. And yet, you live by them. You plan your future around them. You shrink yourself to fit inside them. This is the illusion of limitation. The truth is, human potential has never been easy to measure. It does not fit on a scale or within a category. It cannot be contained by a title or a degree or a resume. What you are is far more vast, more fluid, more alive than any label that's ever been placed upon you. But believing in this truth requires a shift, a letting go of certainty, because people would rather believe they are limited than admit they are free. You see, if you are limited, then failure is expected. If you are limited, you are protected from the risk of trying. You are shielded from the weight of full responsibility. But when you realize you are capable, you truly understand that the walls were never real. You can no longer hide. You can no longer blame the world. You must rise to meet your own potential. And that's terrifying. So we choose comfort over truth. We sit in the cage and pretend we are trapped, even when the door is wide open. Freedom asks more of you. It demands that you stop waiting for someone else to hand you permission. It asks you to become your own authority, and not in some grand, dramatic way, but in the quiet, subtle moments, the way you speak to yourself in the morning, the way you approach a challenge, the way you stop saying, I could never, and start asking, what if I did? The illusion of limitation is not just a lie, it is a choice, one that we make again and again every time we doubt our own power, every time we say no to something simply because it stretches us beyond what feels safe or familiar. But growth never happens in comfort. Greatness never lives in the predictable. You must be willing to be wrong, to stumble, to begin poorly, because that is how truth reveals itself, through movement, through experimentation, through the willingness to be uncomfortable long enough to discover what lies beyond the boundary. Somewhere inside you there is a deeper knowing, a knowing that existed long before you were taught what was realistic, a knowing that whispers not in loud declarations, but in quiet urgings, a pull towards something more, something larger than the current version of you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't push, it invites. And most people ignore it because the invitation always comes with uncertainty. But if you listen closely, you'll hear it in the stillness, in the ache for more, in the dissatisfaction that cannot be numbed no matter how much you distract yourself. That discomfort is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of awakening. To believe in your own possibility is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the return to something you were born knowing, but taught to forget. You were not made to be small. You were not designed to live within walls of doubt. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not even your thoughts. You are the awareness beneath them, the presence that watches and chooses and grows. And when you begin to see that, everything shifts. Not because your outer world suddenly changes, but because you stop accepting false boundaries as truth. You stop playing a role and start living a reality of your own making. There's no secret formula, no perfect timing. The only thing standing between you and what you're capable of is a belief that you aren't capable. And that belief you can drop, just like that. Not because it's easy, but because it was never real to begin with. You spend so much time chasing, striving, and seeking, as though what you need is somewhere out there waiting to be found. You look to books, to gurus, to plans and blueprints, hoping they'll show you the way to become more, to become confident, successful, wise, worthy. But what if the very premise is backwards? What if you're not meant to become anything? Because you already are. There is a quiet truth most people miss, not because it is hidden, but because it is too simple. You are not a project to be fixed. You are not an empty vessel that needs to be filled up with worth. You are not some half-formed thing waiting for permission to be whole. You are already it. You have always been it. And you will continue to be it, no matter how many times you forget. But the world teaches you to forget. It teaches you to compare, to measure, to chase after ideals and images that are constantly shifting. You grow up learning that value lies in proving, in achieving, in becoming something more than you are right now. And so, you set out on this endless pursuit, believing that once you reach a certain milestone, once you have the title, the validation, the recognition, yet even when you get there, something feels missing. The satisfaction fades. The restlessness returns. Because the hole you're trying to fill isn't outside of you, it's the illusion that you were ever lacking in the first place. What you seek is not found through striving. It is revealed through remembering. Beneath all your doubts and distractions lies a deeper self, calm, clear, capable. That part of you doesn't need fixing. It doesn't need improving. It only needs to be recognized. And this doesn't mean you don't grow or evolve. Growth is natural. It's part of life. But growth doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means unfolding into more of it. Like a tree doesn't become a tree. It grows from what was already within the seed. You're the same. The strength, the wisdom, the beauty. It's not something you acquire. It's something you allow to rise. But this can be uncomfortable, because we've been taught to trust what we can measure. And this inner knowing cannot be measured. It cannot be shown to others or certified by institutions. It exists in stillness. It exists when you stop trying to prove yourself long enough to simply be. You've likely had glimpses of it. Moments where you felt inexplicably clear or deeply at peace. Moments where you acted with confidence, not because you were certain of the outcome, but because you were rooted in something unshakable. Those moments aren't accidents. They are flashes of your truest nature breaking through the noise. The task, then, is not to add more to yourself, but to strip away what isn't yours. The fears you've inherited, the roles you perform, the expectations you carry like weights on your back. You don't need them. They are not who you are. You're not the story you tell yourself in your lowest moment. You're not the voice of doubt that says you're not ready. You're not the image you try to project to make others think you have it all together. You are the awareness behind all of it. You are the one who notices the fear, not the fear itself. You are the presence that remains even when everything else falls away. That presence is not something you earn. It is something you return to. And when you return to it, when you truly allow yourself to rest in the truth of what you already are, you realize that the search was never necessary. That all the striving, all the running, was like chasing your own shadow, not knowing that the light was already behind you. This is not a call to passivity. This is not about giving up on growth. It's about letting go of the illusion that you are broken or behind. Because once you stop trying to become and start acting from the truth that you already are, your actions are no longer desperate, they are deliberate. No longer rooted in fear, but in clarity. The moment you realize you are already it, everything changes. Not because the world outside of you shifts, but because the lens through which you see it is no longer clouded by doubt. You stop waiting for permission to live fully. You stop seeking yourself in other people's reflections. You begin to speak, move, and create from a place of knowing. And that knowing is your truest power. There is nothing more to earn, nothing more to prove. You were whole from the beginning. You just needed to remember. Faith is often misunderstood. People think it's about certainty, about holding tight to a belief, about knowing exactly what's going to happen and trusting it will unfold in your favor. But real faith isn't certainty at all. It's the opposite. It's stepping forward when you don't know, when nothing is clear, when the ground feels unstable and the future is hidden in shadow, and still something within you whispers, keep going. Faith is not a rigid grasping. It is a letting go, a surrender. Not the kind of surrender that means giving up, but the kind that means loosening your grip on the illusion of control. It is the understanding that life doesn't owe you explanations, and yet it has never failed to move forward, moment by moment, breath by breath. You are not the one pushing the sun into the sky each morning. You are not the one keeping your heart beating as you sleep, and still everything continues. That's the quiet power of surrender. It allows you to flow with what is rather than resist what isn't. You see, most people are at war with life. They fight the unfolding. They demand answers before they act. They bargain with the unknown. I'll try, but only if I know it will work out. That's not faith. That's transaction. Real faith is when you show up even when you're terrified. Even when your voice shakes and your hands are unsteady. Faith says, I don't know how this will go, but I trust that whatever happens, I'll find my way through it. But that kind of trust takes courage. It takes a deep internal shift from living as if everything must be controlled to realizing that most of what matters can never be controlled at all. You don't get to decide who stays or who leaves. You don't get to force your timing onto life seasons. You can plant the seed, water the soil, give it sunlight, but the growth, that belongs to something greater than you. Surrendering is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. It means standing in the middle of chaos and choosing not to collapse. It means releasing the constant need to fix, to predict, to force. It means allowing life to be what it is and finding peace not because things are perfect, but because you are no longer bound to the need for perfection. Faith also asks you to surrender your identity, the version of yourself you've clung to out of fear, the one who always needs a plan, always needs control, always needs to know. That version was built to survive, but not to thrive. To have faith is to say, I'm willing to become more than this. I'm willing to step into what I cannot yet define. You begin to live differently when you live by faith. You stop chasing guarantees. You stop delaying your joy until everything is figured out. You start to walk lighter, speak softer, breathe deeper. Because you realize you were never meant to carry it all alone. You realize that surrender is not a loss of power, but a reunion with it. It's in the letting go that you create space. Space for clarity to arise. Space for grace to enter. Space for something unexpected and beautiful to unfold. When you try to control everything, you limit yourself to only what you can imagine. But when you surrender, you open yourself to possibilities beyond what your mind can conceive. This doesn't mean you don't take action. Faith is not passive. It's not about sitting still and hoping things fall into place. It's about showing up with your whole heart and releasing the outcome, doing what you can with what you have and trusting that it's enough. And if it's not enough today, you trust that it taught you something for tomorrow. There will be moments when it feels like nothing makes sense, when you question everything, when fear tries to convince you to turn back. But in those moments, faith is the quiet voice that says, keep going anyway. Not because the path is easy, but because something inside you knows it's yours to walk. You are not here to control life. You are here to experience it fully, with all its beauty, its sorrow, its uncertainty. Faith is what allows you to open your arms to it all, not to fight it, not to escape it, but to live it deeply and truly, moment by moment, without needing to know what comes next. We are taught to believe that life should move in straight lines, that progress is a neat staircase we climb, one step after another, always upward. But life does not work like that. The journey is not linear. It bends and loops. It circles back before it moves forward. Sometimes it stands still. Sometimes it collapses entirely, only to rebuild itself in an unexpected way. And if you're not ready for that, you'll think you're failing when you're simply unfolding. There will be days when everything makes sense, when your path feels clear and your heart feels certain. But there will also be days when confusion takes over, when doubt weighs heavy, and nothing you try seems to work. These aren't detours. They are part of it. They are not signs that you've lost your way. They are invitations to see that the way was never meant to be straight. Growth is messy. It's filled with contradictions. One day you feel strong, the next you're back in old patterns you thought you had left behind. One moment you feel full of purpose, and the next you can't remember why you started at all. And that's okay. You're not broken, you're not behind. You're simply moving through a process that has its own rhythm, its own intelligence, and it rarely follows the schedule you plan. Sometimes the lesson doesn't come wrapped in clarity. Sometimes it arrives disguised as failure, as silence, as stillness. And only later, when you've moved through it, do you see how it shaped you. The moments you thought were wasted become the very soil from which your strength grows. The setbacks you cursed become the teachers that woke you up. Nothing is lost. Not really. Even the pauses are perfect. We live in a world that glorifies speed, that tells you to keep moving, keep climbing, keep proving. Something sacred in the slow unfolding, something deeply human in taking a step back before taking a step forward. You don't need to rush. You don't need to know all the answers today. You are allowed to evolve in spirals. Sometimes what looks like going backward is actually deepening, like a tree that grows downward before it rises. It extends its roots into the darkness, into the unseen, to create the strength needed to rise tall. You are the same. The seasons of your life will not always look like progress from the outside, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Some of the most powerful changes happen in silence, beneath the surface. And yes, you will make mistakes. You will try things that don't work. You will trust people who leave. You will outgrow places that once felt like home. You will become someone you barely recognize. And then you will find your way back to yourself again. This, too, is part of the journey. There is no final version of you waiting at the end of the path. You are a process, a living question, not a finished answer. So many people give up not because they lack ability, but because they expected the path to be smooth. When the road curves, they assume something's gone wrong. But the path curves because it's real. It challenges you because you are capable of more than comfort. The journey shapes you in ways that the destination never could. You don't have to understand it all to trust it. You don't need to see the entire road to take the next step. What matters is that you keep showing up, imperfect, unsure, but willing. Life meets you in your willingness. It responds not to your plans, but to your openness. It doesn't ask you to be perfect. It only asks you to be present. There is beauty in the mess. There is meaning in the unexpected, and even when you feel lost, you are being carried, perhaps not where you wanted to go, but exactly where you need to be. In time, you will look back and see how it all connected. But for now, walk with faith in the unknown. Let the journey shape you, twist you, stretch you. Let it humble you. Let it awaken you. This is not a race. There is only your truth, unfolding one imperfect step at a time. Let that be enough, because it already is. We spend so much of our lives chasing something, some idea of success, some version of happiness, some perfect moment that exists just out of reach. And in doing so, we miss what's right in front of us. We overlook the simple truth that this moment, right here and now, is already enough. Not because it fits some grand vision, not because it's extraordinary in the eyes of the world, but because it is real. It is happening, and it is the only place where life ever truly exists. The mind loves to wander. It drifts into the past, replaying what could have been different, and it leaps into the future, trying to control what hasn't happened yet. But the past is gone, and the future is a dream. The only place where you can be is here, now, breathing, alive. The moment may not be perfect, but it is whole. And the moment, when truly seen, contains everything. We've been taught to treat now as a stepping stone, as a means to some greater end. But what if the present isn't a bridge to somewhere else? What if it is the destination itself? When you slow down and pay attention, you begin to realize that the richness of life has always been in the subtle details, the way the light filters through the trees, the sound of your own breath, the feeling of being fully present in your own body without needing anything to change. The idea that you must achieve something extraordinary to be worthy of peace is an illusion. Peace does not arrive when everything is finally in place. It arrives the moment you stop resisting what already is. The moment you no longer argue with reality, no longer chase after what's missing, but instead sink into the stillness of now. There is a kind of quiet power in realizing that you don't have to strive every second, that you can let yourself simply be. This doesn't mean you stop growing. It doesn't mean you give up on dreams. But it means you stop postponing your peace until those dreams come true. It means you stop believing that you must earn your right to feel okay. You already are okay. You've just forgotten how to notice. When you begin to rest in the present moment, you also begin to see how temporary everything is. The joy, the sadness, the tension, the beauty, it all arises and it all falls away. Nothing lasts forever. And that's not a tragedy, that's a gift. Because it means that every breath is unrepeatable. Every conversation, every silence, every glance, once it passes, it will never return in quite the same way. That's what gives it meaning. The moment is not asking you to perform. It's not asking you to fix everything. It's simply asking you to witness it, to show up for it, to experience life not through the lens of what it could be, but for what it actually is, right now, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's uncertain, even if it's quiet, especially then. There is a depth to the present that cannot be accessed when you're caught in the mind's endless projections. The mind will always tell you that something is missing, that you need to do more, be more, get more. But the moment has no such demands. It holds you exactly as you are. You don't need to impress it. You don't need to explain yourself to it. It embraces you without condition. Try it. Sit in silence without needing to label the moment, without needing to judge it as good or bad. Simply feel it. Let it be what it is. You might be surprised by what you find. There's a stillness underneath all the noise, a clarity that doesn't come from thinking harder, but from letting go. Life is not something to be chased, it is something to be experienced. And the deeper truth is this: everything you think you're looking for, peace, freedom, meaning, is already here, not in some distant event, but in the stillness that lives inside this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. You don't need to reach for it. You only need to return to it. The moment is enough, not because it is everything you wanted, but because it is everything you have. And if you can truly be with it, without running, without clinging, without needing to escape, you may just discover that it has always been more than enough. So, in the stillness of this very moment, in the ebb and flow of your winding path, in the quiet surrender of faith, and in the realization that you were never truly limited, you begin to remember who you are. Not a fixed identity chasing a future or haunted by the past, but a living process, unfolding with grace in your own time. There is no final version of you to become, no peak to reach before you're worthy of peace. The truth is, you've always had what you needed. The moment is enough, you are enough. And that knowing, that quiet, unshakable trust is where everything begins.